Hey everyone, it's Jeffrey Poston, and I want to thank you for taking a few minutes of your time today to view this video. Now we're here because we have some common interest in the industry of cannabis or hemp. You no doubt already know the vast financial potential of this industry, and I assume you're a sophisticated or accredited investor, so you understand startup risks, even though you may not have the time or infrastructure to launch a cannabis or hemp startup of your own. I have the framework to do this for us. And so I'd like to share some background information about myself and some ideas on how we might collaborate. So let's get started.
So who is Jeffrey Poston? Well, I'm 61, so I have a lot of life experience. I've been an Air Force officer, a laser optics engineer, a senior project manager overseeing $25 million projects, a real estate broker, a rehab investor, a syndicator, and an international #1 best-selling author. That's right, if you like page-turning action thrillers, check out American Terrorist, Where's the Girl on Amazon. Now, after my 20-year stint in corporate America, you could say I'm now a serial entrepreneur. I currently run 5 holding companies and a nonprofit foundation, and I'm starting another holding company for a high-end rehab on the Strand in Manhattan Beach, California, in addition to Project Medcan, which is what we're here to talk about today, along with opening a healing center next year to help people strengthen their immune system before and after harsh chemo and radiation cancer treatments. Now, I've been doing rehab flips for 27 years, and before I started using OPM, other people's money, my 20-year average ROI was a whopping 51%. But what you won't see about me is the fancy car or slick clothes or jewelry or any of that jet-setting nonsense that wastes money. I live comfortably, sure, but I'm all about investor ROI and my nonprofit, and I keep my umbrella management company lean and quick to pivot to new opportunities. So here's how the framework got started. Now, if you're still with me, here comes the good stuff. I want to share a little bit about this Poston Collective Framework that I use to run all of my companies. You see, way back in late 2014, I mentioned to my executive business coach that I just wasn't making enough money as a real estate broker. All my clients were rocking it, but I was making just 3% commissions. And she suggested that I was wasting my skills as a real estate broker, and I confessed that I'd always been envious of my clients who could write a check for $50,000 or $100,000 or more to buy a rehab project. But I had no way in my foreseeable future to make that kind of money and write those big checks. Therefore, it seemed I was destined to bootstrap small rehab projects on my own. That's when she suggested I become a syndicator. And I simply said, why would anyone give me their money to do a rehab project? So then she said, maybe I should call 3 of the investors that I made the most money for in real estate who already knew me and trusted me and ask them for $10,000 to $15,000 each to start an investment collective. Well, I was afraid to call them, so I emailed them instead, except I forgot to put in the amount that I wanted. But they all said yes, and instead of giving me just $10,000 to $15,000 each, one gave me $90,000, a second one gave me $35,000, and the third gave me $110,000 to invest, all within 2 months, and all from a single email. And it was simply because they already trusted me not only to manage a rehab, which they all knew I could do, but they also trusted me to manage their money and project risk. Now, as a professional project manager, I'm all about systems and standard operating procedures, so over the past 5 years, I've put in a lot of background work building this framework. I've grown my collective from 3 to 37 investors, and I've moved a couple of $1 million in investor funds in and out of the collective. So now I can form a holding company within 2 weeks and start a rehab project within a month. I can track every budget down to the penny. Using investor funds, I've averaged 23% ROI in the last 5 years, with a low of 4% and a high of 117%. I built an autopilot funnel to attract investors, and I maintain solid communication with all investors with bi-weekly updates. I promise complete transparency, and I share good news, and I also share the problems. And I keep my full track record on my website for everyone to see. Now, in 2019, I literally have strangers experienced investors calling me. I don't have to call them, they call me when they're ready to invest because of all this complete and transparent info that I share, and they wire me their money after a single phone call or only after a couple of emails. Because through my framework and my communication system, strangers grow to know me and like me and trust me before they talk to me. So they're already in a pre-framed mindset to invest their money with me. And I keep my promises. First, that I give 10% of all net profit to charity. And second, that my investors get paid before I do and they make more money than I make. So how does this framework relate to our cannabis or hemp startup? Well, in the beginning of my collective, many new investors who didn't know me, they grilled me with tons of questions about a project because those were tangible things that they understood. But they still wouldn't give me their money because the questions they maybe didn't know how to articulate were these. How do you know your money is safe with me? And how is your money secured? And things always go wrong, so how will I manage risks? When I started answering these specific questions, I started getting money from the investors. Then the only thing they wanted to know was how I do business and how I produce massive ROI for my investors. And that's when I realized it's not about the project, it's about the project manager. Here's how this story relates to Project MedCan's cannabis or hemp divisions. 2 years ago, when I started asking investors for seed money, they'd ask questions about the farm, or the master grower, or the dispensary revenue. Now I realized they were looking for something to trust because they didn't know me yet. Then they'd say, once I started an operation and had something to show, then they'd consider investing. But we're not in the growth phase yet. We're not looking for Series A or Series B funds yet. We're in the startup phase, so we're looking for seed funding. And so the only things that investors can place trust in at this point are me, my team, and my framework. Because at this point, it's not about the project, it's about the project manager. After all, they're not going to be giving their money to a farm or a master grower employee or a dispensary manager. They'd have to give their money to me, so they have to grow to trust me. So the Poston Collective Framework has allowed me to put into place almost $100,000 in infrastructure so far, a strong advisory board, access to one of the top cannabis CPAs in the country, access to one of California's top cannabis attorneys who prepared our 2 PPMs for the upcoming $10 million raises. We have 3 resumes for cannabis master growers on hand. I have several resumes for hemp master growers who are also members of national hemp associations. We've had preliminary talks with 4 of the top 10 cannabis operators in New Mexico who are motivated and ready to negotiate. I found 500 acres of distressed farms with water rights ready and willing to convert to hemp, and that's more than enough to gain a foothold in the hemp business. A top consultant for the number 2 cannabis operation in New Mexico is a member of my collective, so he can develop our industry-specific standard operating procedures. And we have a full cannabis business plan that was prepared by a professional cannabis consultant in California. So why do we need seed money? We've done a lot of work building the concept and the vision so far. So to implement, we need additional funding. We'll need a professional update to the cannabis business plan, and we'll need to adapt a hemp version of that plan. We'll need to update our PPMs. We can't bootstrap a state-regulated hemp business because according to law, once we buy the licenses, we have to plant seeds within a month. For cannabis, we'll have to negotiate with existing licensees, and no one will engage in any serious negotiation unless we can show that we at least have earnest money ready to deploy into purchase or master lease contracts for farms, which are real estate contracts, or grow operations, which are business contracts. We'll have to pay the attorney to draft offers and contracts. Once in due diligence, we'll have to pay the CPA to evaluate and review existing grow operation financials. Before we close a purchase or lease, we'll have to pay our consultant to develop our standard operating procedure so that all of our business components operate the same way. and there's even some company overhead needed too. Now, you're here because you already know the potential of investing in the cannabis and hemp industries. You already know that established cannabis companies are delivering massive ROI for their investors. You also know that investing in a startup, while risky, is the single best entry point in the industry to maximize your ROI. Startup investors earn the biggest returns, while Series A and B investors do well over the long term with 7 to 10 year exits. So this startup really is not about the farm or the master grower or the dispensary or the plant varieties or anything else. If we implement our business plan properly, these things will take care of themselves. This is really about, can you trust me with your money? Will I and my team deliver the ROI you expect? Do you believe my framework will secure your investment? Do you believe I will keep my promise to pay investors first? Will I continue to communicate biweekly and with complete transparency?
So, if you're still with me and the answer to those questions might be yes, then follow up with the person that sent you this video or email or text me directly because here comes my contact information. Then let's schedule a conference call or grab some coffee. And don't forget, life is good.